certainly one of the things that a lot of people have been noticing in the market lately is sentiment. How bearish sentiment has been, but certainly the commitment of traders. It's not just what people are saying; it's kind of like what they're actually doing. Do you pay attention to sentiment as well?
I do. I
Mm-hmm.
do. Can be a hard read. I've been a sentiment person for a very, very long time. So
Mm-hmm.
I have sort of my go-to sentiment thoughts. I rely more on the positioning than I do the general sentiment, but I do pay quite a bit of attention to general sentiment. I don't think that I don't really think that the sentiment data things are great out there. AAII is a sentiment thing. I don't think it's great. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't test great. Um, all of my I don't think or I do think is based on actual testing of data, right? What I
Mm-hmm.
think or not think is I don't want to get involved with. I don't think because the data doesn't test well, I'm trying to look to statistics to tell me what to think or not to think. But I don't think the CNN fear greed thing has not shown me any value.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even see that as being a sentiment indicator because if you look at it, most of the inputs into that are actually price indicators. Overbought, oversold, so those are
Mm-hmm.
price, not sentiment. I don't
Right.
really see it as a sentiment indicator. But I do listen to a lot of things. I do read a lot of things. I listen to the people on TV to try and gauge sentiment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't listen to people on TV to try and get ideas. I listen to try and gauge sentiment.
Mm-hmm.
And I read a lot to try and gauge sentiment. And what I always find with sentiment is if you're questioning what it is, well, then it's not consensus. When sentiment is consensus
Mm-hmm.
because you'll watch whatever CNBC or Bloomberg TV or whatever, and you'll have 10 guests come on and 9 or 10 of them will say the same exact thing.
Right.
Um, it happens.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then when that matches up with the positioning, which it usually will do, then we're talking about, hey, things are one-sided and there's a good chance that there's a good risk reward in going the other way.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go ahead and share a screen real quick with our market surge charts, and I'm going to throw up the Nasdaq, and maybe you could talk a little bit more about some of the market turns. I know one of the times that you came on, it was such a clear setup. I want to say it was. When when you had a news failure event, and again, this is using your term, but it was CPI. I remember it was in October, and CPI came in at the highest level that it had been like ever. Not ever, but in like years, decades. And you were looking at the fact that on that measure, the the moving averages, I mean the indexes had really just taken off. They went down at first, but then they really started piling in. And this was October 13th, 2022, if I'm not mistaken. So this is the day, and it really was a great way for you to kind of recognize a market turn. You had really bad news, and it clobbered the market, but by the end of the day, uh, it was up two and a quarter, at least for the Nasdaq, and that was the beginning of the recovery that started in 2023. Um, have you had any examples of that? I mean, this year we had a lot of the tariff tantrum stuff happening in February and March and April. Um, was there anything like that this time around?
Sure, look at that low day.
Yeah,
That
I
was
mean,
on a Monday.
hmm
The market was obviously falling because of the tariff tantrum.
right.
We had news over the weekend
hmm
that was even more negative, tariffs. The market, as you can see, made new lows, gapped down, made new lows over the course of the day,
hmm
and closed higher. And
Yeah.
that was the exact bottom. When the bad news that's driving the market down can no longer drive the market down, right? Then there you go, right? In particular, if everybody's bearish and everybody's short already, and then the bad news that they've been shorting on can no longer drive the market down, that's when you have a good chance that the market is going to turn. That's exactly how I do it, and that's
hmm
exactly what I look for. So yeah, it was right there. I can give you all examples because every trade that I do
hmm
that's what it looks like. Not that
hmm
all of them work, but
Right.
work or not work, they all look like that.
Hmm.
People are the commitment trader is showing that traders are very short. I am following what the narrative is that is making them so bearish. I'm looking for news that confirms that bearishness, and then a market that refuses to go down despite that.
Hmm. So now the other element here, especially with the news cycle of the last year, is a lot of times you've gotten this news. There's been kind of um, a few days, a few weeks, sometimes a reversal of the news. And I mean, just an example of that is recently on October 10th, where you had President Xi of China and President Trump kind of going back and forth with, an increase in tariffs, rare earths, a lot of back and forth, a really ugly day on October 10th. But then, it kind of ends up working itself out. But it's hard, right? Because a lot of times you get, oh, a deal is in the works, a deal is maybe coming. And so does that offer you as clear of a setup when there's a lot of back and forth of, um,
No, it's hard. And I
yeah.
think that, your earlier question of why have I had less trades during this period?
Hmm.
I can't say that I know for sure because I don't know anything for sure. But
Hmm.
if I want to sit here and give you an explanation of what I think it really comes down to exactly that. I need massively crowded markets to have trades.
Hmm.
You're not going to get massively crowded markets when you have exactly what you're talking about, right? Okay, they might say this, but what do they actually mean? What do people actually believe? You know what I mean? How are people acting based on it, right? We got to the point where it became for that whole taco thing, right?
Yeah.
Sure, they all believed how bad the news was back in March and early April, but as the markets were rebounding, they stopped believing any of this stuff, right?
Hmm.
Oh yeah, she and Trump and all that, and but then no one really believes it anymore because of we know that this is kind of how Donald Trump likes to operate, right?
Hmm.
That's to say crazy things, but then he brings them back in because it's all part of his, I guess, negotiation process, right?
Hmm.
So therefore, we're not really getting very major crowded stuff um, because of that, and therefore, I am not getting a lot of trades. It's
Yeah.
fair enough. I mean, it's sort of I like it because that means it's a sort of a self-correcting
Hmm.
process for me. So
Hmm.
that's good.